Anybody hear me? Going Tech Talk Tuesday coming up. Hey, John. Jimmy, Sam, Rashad. Hey, Wayne, Sam, Ron, all y'all hear me all right today? I'm gonna get it going at 6 o'clock. Hey, Mike Ponder, I'm glad you're doing better. Barry, Jerry, Randy, it's good to see you guys' name on there. Got a lot of good stuff again today. I've been learning a lot about what you guys are interested in, and I can't cover all of it whenever we go and talk, but it's a lot of cool stuff. And a lot of people love hearing about it because everybody doesn't know what if you do this for a living. You know, you learn a lot, just like in your line of work, whatever it is you're working on. Hey, John and Barry, Robert, you guys, what you work on is you learn a lot, and you know a lot about your craft, and you learn a lot about your business, and we're all interested in this racing thing and engine stuff and hot rod Harleys and hot rod cars and engines. And my craft or my passion is the gasoline powered combustion engine. I'll one day I'll like electric engines and electric bikes and electric cars. I know they're really fast, got unbelievable torque. But man, hey Chuck, David, I am a gearhead, and I love me some gasoline burning, nitro burning. I like the pistons and rings required, and the technology required, and the timing of it all is just drives me, makes me stay awake at night. I go to sleep at night thinking about how to make more power, and this new opportunity working in these hot rod Harleys has really opened up my spirit to learn more and gain more and get more and know more and share more. And one of the things I've learned is the more I share, the more I learn, and the more I learn, the more I share. And I know if you keep it to yourself, you don't learn much, and if you share stuff, you learn more. And one day, I just heard that somebody told me I say "anda" a lot. Hey, you're a gearhead too. I know you are, Mitch. You're a gearhead. Frank, you guys, good to see you. A lot of great friends and folks that follow and support here. This is so good. What a blessing to have you guys follow. I think that it's going to be our niche and our passion of these engines that burn fuel, not electric engines, is going to last for a while, because just like the Harleys, if Harley Davidson stopped making motorcycles, there are so many out there and so many people that want them. I think the value would go up, and people would love to have one and work on them and play with them. And I know that when we're young, we're into different things, but as we get a little bit more mature, and I think our average hot rod Harley guy might be 40, 50, 60 years old. A lot of 70s out there, hard to believe. A lot of 30s out there, year-old people, men and women. There's young folks out there that think they're cool too, but when they're slow and heavy, most young folks don't care about them that much. I don't blame them. When I was young and I wanted the lightest, most powerful thing I could get. When I was in high school, I was getting Hot Rod magazine, and I was in junior high, Hot Rod, Carcraft, all of those. It was really neat because I would look on the back page of Hot Rod magazine. They would have some motorcycle, one page, and they would have something about a motorcycle. And I remember Tony Nicosia on the back page of Hot Rod magazine had an H2 Kawasaki, and I think he went a $12.99 or an $11.99 or something. It was the first one to ever go in those big thumbs. It was the first bike to break that time zone that you could buy brand new. So I went and bought one right away. I had to have one of those H2s because it was the lightest and it had the most power. It was an unruly machine. It was no fun to ride, but back then I didn't know any better. I didn't know it was cold. I didn't know I needed protection. I just wanted to G-force. I wanted to go fast. Everywhere I went, I wanted to floor it. So nowadays, now that we're older, I really love the G-force and the acceleration that we can get out of these big old slugs, these Harleys, and they're fun to me now because the guys my age love it too. And so, yeah, we'll bring some young folks in. We'll bring some old folks in. I had Larry Tools, a good friend of mine, he's a Georgia boy, been over living by my shop over here for longer than I've been here. And he hasn't been down the drag strip in 40 years. He hadn't done any racing in 40 years. He's almost 70 years old. He got a Road King. We put him a swing arm and some wheels and tires, and we're building him an engine for it right now. But he took it to the track this last weekend, and he made his first burnouts, his first launches, and his first runs down a quarter mile, 69 to 70 years old. And look, that's not the oldest guy to race. I'm saying he just started, y'all. He just started. So that's what's cool. And now we got the young'uns. There's some, hey, Jay and Chuck and David, how y'all doing, man? One of the fastest guys going right there, David. Thank you for watching, David. You add legitimacy to the program here. You guys that go in the 3s and 8th mile and 200 miles an hour in those small tire cars. Woo, what fun that is. I'm glad y'all drive. I don't. Then who's older? It doesn't matter. I know one thing. I'm the youngest 65-year-old person I know right now. And I know that on top of that, this is the oldest I've ever been in my life right now. It's just how it works. But rejuvenated, man. Ready to go again. Ready to go again. I want to go drag racing again. I want to work on Harleys. I want to go fast. So I got some engine stuff I want to share with you guys. Enough rambling right now. One thing that I wanted to share real quick is our Tech Talk Tuesdays. This is number 30. 30 of these, man. Monica's been taking them. I send them to Monica off my phone, and then she downloads them into YouTube. And the words, the way to get to our YouTube page is we put Star Racing GA. One word, Star Racing GA. That's STARRACING GA. It's got a lot of R's, a lot of G's, but it's Star Racing GA. That stands for Georgia. Now, you go to YouTube, you can catch all of these. So if any of you guys get bored or interested in some of the other subjects, because I've done a lot of subjects, some of them overlap, but when I get the best reviews and the best remarks and the biggest questions about some of the subjects, hey, George and Jesse and Chris, I'll expand on it again another time. I sort of make notes and kind of figure what would be neat. But you guys remember a couple weeks ago or 3 weeks ago, I went over to Columbus, Georgia, and I got to go to a shop and see Dan Parker, my friend. He's totally blind. Him and Shannon Jenkins were the first side-by-side 3-second Pro Mod car racers back, I can't remember how many years ago, over 10 years ago. Anyway, in a Pro Mod car crash 7 years ago, Dan crashed and his car was totaled, and he lost his eyesight, and he's totally blind. And he has been working really, really hard, and his family and his friends, and they have generated a racing team, and they are the Tragedy to Triumph Racing. Tragedy to Triumph Racing. You can find them on Facebook, and it's some interesting stuff. He got that. Those boys got that Corvette going, the one that had Strutmasters on it, and it's built for a blind man to drive. And he went to Spaceport, New Mexico, and he was able to set the blind man's record. I can't remember right off the top of my head, but you guys got to go check it out. But I think he went 160 miles an hour or something, and without any person assisting him. He has GPS guidance system in his helmet and on his car, and his parachutes are controlled by his guidance system. His car turns off if he gets off course. It's really a neat. I can't remember the people's names. God bless Dan for remembering all those people that helped him out. But his team is huge, and the people that have helped him is unbelievable. And of course, his girl Jennifer's been sticking with him like we say in Georgia, like a hair in a biscuit. She's stuck in there with him and trying her best to make it work. And it takes all of them for the dream to come together. But Dan's the most determined, the most dedicated person I know, and totally blind, and he's drove his race car, and he was at Speedport, New Mexico. And the name of the town over there at the Spaceport, not Speedport, Spaceport in New Mexico, the name of the town was Truth or Consequences. I mean, they have a zip code. because over in Truth or Consequences. But they have, I think Dan was able to run 1.5 miles to go top speed, and they had some issues. They had some things. It was their first time out ever, so there was bugs in all the different systems. Car ran great. Dan did great. They were running on hardly any food and sleep. They were 24/7 for weeks. I think Dan slept in the floor of the trailer on the way to New Mexico from Georgia, and his buddies all took turns driving, but to get there. And Dan was able to drive his car himself. He had a co-pilot with him trying to help him out. And one of the runs they ran on Saturday night after fixing everything, I think they ran at 1:30 in the morning in total darkness, and they had a couple of rent-a-cars out there running along about 100 miles an hour trying to light up the runway. And when Dan left them, he went 118 miles an hour, I think it was, in the dark. And don't quote me on the numbers, but I think that he outran the lights of the rental cars. He didn't matter. He couldn't see with the lights of the rental cars. He couldn't see in the daytime. He couldn't see at night. And I think his passenger was hollering uncle because his passenger couldn't see where they were going to even help him. So what a wonderful story that is. But anyway, back to the things I want to cover. Star Racing GA, YouTube. You can go there and watch these repeats and replays of other 30, I think there's 28 of them are posted, and I think this is number 30. Tragedy to Triumph is about Dan Parker's taking his tragedy and turning it into a triumph. He wants to be a 200-mile-an-hour land speed racer, totally blind. And then I wanted to talk about oil in your breathers, off your engines, all engines, not just Harleys. And also I wanted to talk about head flow versus cam size. And one thing about the oil in our breathers, okay? On a Harley Davidson puts the crankcase breathers out of the cylinder heads into the air cleaner so that there won't be oil dripping on the ground. And it makes the engine recirculate the oily mist that comes through out the crankcase breathers, because you're going to get some residue is going to come out of the breathers. They're really small, and there's a lot of misconceptions and misunderstanding going on about the breathers, and all engines have breathers. All engines have breathers. Now, some of you know and have seen Bagzilla, the red bike that I raced last year at a few races, and I set my personal best with it. That red bike, we had a 3/8 fuel hose plugged into 1/4 inch pipe fitting in the head, one valve cover, and we were letting all the crankcase of the 135 cubic inch engine, we were turning it 7,800 RPM, and nothing came out of the vent ever. We got the hose run into a catch can, and the little catch can is a clear bottle, a little teeny clear bottle that you might see it's just got a little nipple on the end. We poked a hole in the side of the little bottle, put the 3/8 hose in it, and then we left the top of the little bottle open to the air so that it wouldn't build up pressure in there. There's a little bit of air coming out of that hose, but if your rings are sealed up nice and your engine's sealed up nice, oil will not come out of the breather. Only a little bit of air. And the bottle that we use and the catch can we use is to hold the oil residue or the mist that comes out and let the air out, so it sort of filters it. Now, through history, we have exceeded the ring's capabilities to seal and turn our engine's RPM that the ring guys and the piston guys have never understood or never imagined we would do. So as we grew and as our sport gained and as our engines made more power, car engines, NASCAR, pro stock car, street cars, hot rod cars, racing motorcycles, pro stock motorcycles, all of them, you guys, we would unseat the rings at some RPM, and I'm going to try my best to explain why. This is a typical 062 top ring, and I say 062 is because it's 062 wide, and it would fit in a piston that we would use. This was a forging that was used in Chevrolets, Fords, cars, Harleys. This is just an Alcoa forging, and it had an 062 top ring. Okay, you can see how big this ringland is in the second ring, and then look how giant the oil ring is. And what's really hideous to me is when you have an oil ring that requires a spacer to go across here, because the ring package is so big that the compression height is shorter than the ring stack. That's a no-no today in my engine building rules is I will always adjust the rod length and the piston and cylinder height and everything in order to get a good ring stack on top of the wrist pin. I don't use the spacers. I have to sometimes, but it's not by choice, okay? So if you have an engine that's got this ring groove spacer across here, that's because your ring package is most likely in the wrong place, the rings are, or they're the wrong size, and they're old style, okay? And I'm not bagging on anybody because, look, we were all old style. All of us one time. If you're not an old style guy or you haven't been around with the old stuff, you're pretty new. So I wanted to share with you that this ring, this top ring, this 062 top ring, I think this is a Molly feel ring. That means that if you could see this really close, you would see that there's a channel machined in this ring. It's a channel shape like this, and it's U-shape, and they sprayed this Molly, plasma Molly, in that channel to give it good endurance to wear against the cylinders and give you fast ring seal. And they work nice, but the problem is whenever the weight of this ring, this is heavy, this is ductile iron, Molly filled, ductile iron, plasma filled, and this ring is heavy, okay? So when this engine's going 5,000 RPM, it stays in contact with this piston. So you don't have any problem. There's nothing coming out of your crankcase breathers. You're sealed up nice. But as soon as this piston starts going faster and stopping and going faster and stopping, as soon at some RPM, the inertia of this ring will overpower its ability to seal to this piston. Okay, the bottom of the top ring seals to the bottom of this ring groove, and it doesn't allow the combustion pressure to get by. But at some RPM, and with this piston and this dial and this ring, it's around 6,000 RPM or maybe 6,500, we start to lose ring seal, and we lose it because this will not stay attached to the piston because of inertia. The piston stops, and this heavy ring is going with it, and when the piston stops, the ring keeps going. That's inertia. And when that ring keeps going, the seal goes to zero, and the combustion and top end pressure, combustion pressure goes by the rings into the crankcase, expands all the gases in the crankcase, and it starts coming out of base gaskets. It comes out of the head breathers, and it pukes oil into your air cleaner or into your catch can. So what I was trying to get to, over the years, we created these unbelievable catch cans. We came up with these really tall cans that would hold a lot of oil and a lot of air, and we put filters, K&N filters on top of the cans, and we were using them as oil separators so that we could let the pressure out of the crankcase go into the can, dump the oil, and then send the pressure back out the can to go on the ground. Top Fuel bikes, a lot have really big catch cans, and they run the breathers out the wheelie bars. Some of the old ones you can see, they have hoses running out the wheelie bars. In Top Fuel cars and funny cars now in NHRA, they have a breather tank in the back of the car that is bigger than the cubic inches of the engine, so that when the engine loses ring seal, all the pressure inside that engine with the 50 pounds of boost and 13 or 14 gallons of nitromethane they burn through it in only 3 or 4 seconds, all that pressure that leaks by the rings has to be contained by that catch can, and their catch can is huge. Well, I'm telling you, it's big as this table on the fuel cars. Now, today, in the more modern era, well, my first Harley Pro Stock engine, this is S&S's deal back in 2000. It had the same big rings, it had the same ring groove spacer, and these were giant rings. There was no accumulator groove, there was no top gas ports, and this engine would go 8,000 RPM, but it would lose ring seal at about 6,500. And just by the grace of the good Lord and valve springs and camshafts, we were able to turn it 8,000 RPM, but it was puking oil like the oil pump was connected to the outside. Pro Stock today has rings so little, and they are so light. Like this is our street version. This is a 0.9 ring. It's 036 versus 062. This ring is about half the weight of this one, and it's made out of tool steel, and it has a really, really nice, it's diamond ground to perfect parallel, and it has coatings on it that are space age coatings compared to the old Molly plasma days. So this ring is so light compared to this one. I mean, in your hand, This one feels like it's made out of plastic and it's not there, and this one is substantial like a piece of lead. Imagine, if you will, at the same control and same RPM, when the piston stops, this ring will stay with the piston longer. And our Pro Stock pistons that we ran in the NHRA with the 2-valve, 2 cylinders, this ring is thinner than this one. Like this 037 will not even fit in here because these were too thin enough and thinner than that. We have top gas ports that blow out the top ring out when there's pressure in the combustion chamber. It will blow the rings out and make them seal perfectly. There's also an accumulator groove right here. I don't know if my camera's good enough, but if you see right here, there's this expansion chamber here where at some RPM, when this ring can't keep up, even though we run less than 1 thou clearance, side clearance, and we run almost 0 back clearance with these gas ports, and the ring is super light. The ring is lighter than this. The rings on the Pro Stock look like oil rails. If you engine builders out there, you know how little an oil rail is. This is like 024. That's really little. But anyway, at some RPM, that ring will lose seal. 10,000, 10,500, maybe 11,000 RPM on this engine, on this Pro Stock piston. The pressure would get by that top ring, and it would build up on this in this accumulator on top of the second ring rather than build this pressure between the rings and blow the top ring off. So everything we can do to extend the RPM range, because RPM makes horsepower. The higher you can turn it with proper breathing, the more horsepower you make. So we have to contain that pressure at the highest RPM we can. So I was just letting you know that we have just enough oil ring here to make this work. But if you'll look, this piston's really advanced. I think over 2 years or 3 years, we ended up with 15 different versions to make this go fast. This one's used. You can see it's had some wear. But this top land is not quite high enough, and it's dictated by the depth of the valve pockets. That's why I wanted to talk about cam timing. The cam timing, when the intake valve opens and when the exhaust valve closes, dictates where this ring can be. It sounds stupid, but I had a good friend one time, Larry Widmer, told me in 1988, he said, one day you will build pistons, you will build cams to fit your pistons instead of building pistons to fit your cams. Let me try and say that again because I wasn't thinking right. In 1988, Larry Widmer told me, one day in the future you will build cams to fit the pistons you need to make the power instead of building pistons to fit cams that are out there, because there is a cam. There's a cam out there that the guys were using to go fast, and everybody had to build their heads and their pistons to suit that cam. Things are different today. Larry was right. He told me about 10 really important things like that came true over the last 20 years. But this is cool because this highly developed piston, top gas ports, has enough room to keep the ring from breaking through. This is called the B dimension, where this ring gets close to the inside of the pocket. If you look at this one, you know, there's lots of ways around it. You'd say, well, why do you have valves so big? Well, that's what makes them go fast. You got to get air in them. So light rings, stay sealed up, an accumulator groove for the pressure. You don't want, here's the rest of the story. When the pressure does get by the top ring, at some RPM, the pressure gets by the top ring. Man, my hands are shaking. And the second ring is not a compression ring. It is an oil scraper. So you don't want it to, it's shaped like a squeegee. It scrapes oil off the cylinders. But it can contain a little pressure that leaks by the top ring and gets on top of the second ring. And then if that pressure gets big enough, it will help the top ring come off of the ring of the piston's ring seat, and you'll lose horsepower and your combustion pressure will go by in the bottom end and then start weeping out of the breathers again. And I promised to tell a story about the vacuum pumps. The vacuum pump is the reason we run vacuum pumps is so we can create a negative pressure in the crankcase so that we will keep this ring sealed to the piston longer at more RPM. Because if the pressure on top of this ring is bigger than the pressure, if the pressure under this ring is bigger than the pressure on top, at some RPM, at some place, that pressure will lift this ring up and the inertia will help it peel off. And it's just like peeling the seal open. And it's got big pressure built up on top. And as soon as this leaks, All that power goes right by the piston, blows in the bottom end, and then it starts weeping oil out of your breather. So it's really a great goal. Like on Bagzilla, that red bike I ran, it had a 135-inch engine. We turned it 7,800. It was a 4.4 bore and a 4.3 stroke, and it had no blow-by, zero, y'all. Listen to me. The crankcase breather, we had one hose coming off that whole engine. We had a little baby bottle, and the only thing in that bottle after a whole weekend of racing was a little bit of water, where the engine was so sealed up it squeezed moisture out of the air. I just sent a customer friend a video today of his little puke bottle, and it had about 2 ounces of water in it, and it looked clean enough to drink, but it wasn't oil and mist that comes out. Now, when you see a Harley or a car that's leaking oil out of the valve covers, or it's leaking oil out of the gaskets, or it's leaking oil out of the crankcase breathers, you have to put a bigger vent if you're not going to take it apart and fix it. Buying a piston kit from a manufacturer that has acceptable pistons and acceptable rings and acceptable bore and hone will get you by. But look, when you can prove this to yourself. You have a 128 kit or a 124 kit and you're a Milwaukee 8, go out and ride it. Clean your air cleaner, clean your air filter, get all the oil out, all the residue, clean it, go ride it, and never turn it over 4,000 RPM. I don't care if you go 100 miles an hour or 70 or 80 all day. Just don't rev it up. Keep it under 4,000 RPM. Come back, take the air cleaner out, and it is clean. There's no blow-by, because guess what? Your rings stay, if the cylinders are good and if the pistons are good and if the rings are good, the rings stay sealed up because the ring didn't come off the ringland. And then go out and test the rev limiter, go up there and run about 6,500 about 4 times, and then come back and check your air cleaner. It's puking oil. What happened? What changed? The rings are not staying sealed at high RPM. Now, there are companies out there that sell really great breather kits. There's one-way valves. There's catch cans. There's all kind of cool stuff where you can let that oil mist come out, because when it leaks, it creates a lot of pressure. And there's guys that say because these pistons are this big and they're going up and down, they're building pressure underneath, but they're not building pressure underneath. The only way pressure gets under there is if the ring leaks, just like Bagzilla, the 135. I had pressure under there, but it was atmosphere from outside under the pistons. It was 1 atmosphere, and the pistons are going up and down, and they're moving the atmosphere around inside the engine. Just moving it around. They're not building up more pressure. The only way more pressure can get in the bottom end is for that 1,000 pounds of combustion to get by the rings and blow in the bottom end. And then call them up and order the ventilators. Mike makes a great one. So a little A1 ventilator. He puts it on the oil cap. It gives that pressure a place to go. It vents it out of the engine so you don't get oil in your air cleaner. The worst thing about having oil in the air cleaner is you're not going to fix that. But if you put the external breather on that they sell, a lot of guys sell them. They're awesome because they give you a chance to get the pressure out of the bottom end that's built up from ring seal, okay? Now, it also stops the oil from going in your air cleaner. You can plug off the oil going in the air cleaner and have it come out of the little ventilator that goes on the oil plug. On cars, we used to have the breathers on the valve covers, and they would weep oil out at high RPM when you miss gears and stuff. But y'all, we didn't know about this. We had these rings in our Chevrolets and Fords and Dodges and Hemis and 440s and 383s. We had these big rings. These were made for air compressors, and the air compressors would turn 2,000 RPM. You get good ring seal at low RPM because the ring can follow the piston. Now, your high RPM Harley and your high RPM car now, you're going to have blow-by at some point. So how can you reduce that? Well, you do a better job with the cylinders. You do a better job with the ring design. You do a better job with the piston design. And you do a good job with the bore and hone. Another thing that happens when you buy those big mail order kits, Harley sells a 110 kit for the 103s, and these cylinders are so thin that this can't stay round. When you put 800,000 PSI on when it's under power stroke, these cylinders move. They wiggle. And when that pressure comes by there, it goes in the bottom end, it weeps out the air cleaners or out your breather can. So make sure you got substantial. We have a shop minimum here of 065. When we do our Thrasher kits, the biggest we can bore your 103 cylinders is a 107 kit. And the biggest we can bore your 110 Screaming Eagle twin cam is 113 in order to keep our minimum cylinder wall thickness here. Now, if you want to go bigger engine, bore the cases, get some big sleeves, get some substantial iron and substantial cylinder wall so that you can maintain the round, straight size and shape that the rings need to stay sealed, okay? Does that make sense, y'all? Now, the Milwaukee 8s, people ask me, said, yep, I got a 107 Milwaukee 8. Okay, the 107, we can bore it out to 121 with the CVO cylinders or their Screaming Eagle cylinders. It has a 4-inch 350 OD sleeve in it, so we can bore it out to 4.185. If you have a 114 or a 117 with a 4.5-inch stroke, that same 4.185 will make a 124. All right, that's substantial. The cylinder wall is thick enough. There's a lot of you guys out there running right now 124s with a 4.185. Now, there are kits out there for sale, a 128, and now Harley has a 131 where they put bigger sleeves in, but they still make them so thin that I won't sell cylinders that thin. If it's thinner than 065, especially if they use the real low-cost cylinder sleeves that aren't strong, what we'll do is we'll use an aftermarket cylinder like this. It's got huge tensile strength. We'll bore out the stock cylinders, and we'll put this big liner in there. And this is a 4.4 bore, and we bore the cases where this will fit. But this cylinder wall, if I was going to put a turbo on this or a supercharger or a nitrous, this will hold it because this is a 175 wall per side. Okay? That 131 kit that Harley's selling, I think it's 40 thou per side. I'm talking about a cookie cutter. Like, you can take the 131 cylinders and you can squeeze them and make them move. This right here, you're going to have to put this in a major press to make it move. So anyway, I just wanted to talk about that and explain to you guys why cylinder walls thickness and substantial meat is better. Same thing I was telling you about last week about the wrist pins and the pistons. You want the piston strong enough to keep the rings 90 degrees to the bore. You want the wrist pin to stay stiff enough to stay straight and to keep the piston straight. So all this is very, very important in order for you not to lose combustion pressure into the crankcase. You want it all to stay above the piston. You want all that pressure to stay above the piston. And when you run one and it goes fast and you take it apart, you should see combustion from this ring up. You should never see color or combustion down here. If you see it and you take your engine apart, I see a lot of twin cams and a lot of Milwaukee 8s come in. And let me get the pin. This area right here has a lot of gas on it where this has been leaking and it got in here and it goes right in the bottom end and it pukes oil out of the breathers. Did I spend enough time on that for you guys to try and understand that? And then just a teaser before we go. Everybody's heard about it and everybody's read about it. The HPI Milwaukee 8, 70 millimeter. This is their new manifold. It's a new 70 millimeter. HPI makes this. Very proud to have it because we've been flowing heads and building engines and we got them up 200 horse and we ran out of air. So I'm hoping, I haven't had a chance to test this yet, but I am hoping that this will open up the doors for us to get more air through the Milwaukee 8 so we can turn more RPM and make more power. Here's a fully ported Milwaukee 8 port. You can see how that looks. I did a port mold so you can see what it looks like, okay? This is a B2 with the big valves. 2 valve, all right? Let's compare them. This is a B2. They make a lot of power. Right now, same horsepower per cubic inch as the Milwaukee 8. In just 3 years, we've got these big enough and flow enough now. We've got them almost making as much as the B2. So we're going to have to keep flowing the B2 We're going to have to make this flow more air to keep up with the Milwaukee 8, and we're going to have to learn more about the Milwaukee 8 to get it to keep up with the B2 heads. And I'm hoping that this new throttle body and this new manifold will open those doors for us. I know I've gone kind of long. Forgive me for that. Again, what a blessing. Please take all this stuff that I've told you and don't be offended. You guys that have shops and you guys that teach and preach and share and sell products. These are just my opinions. I'm not talking about you. I'm not talking about trying to call you out. There's a place for all of that. And when we keep the stuff within its limitations, most of it is really good stuff. But the hocus pocus and the misunderstanding that's out there is a little frustrating sometimes, but the good Lord did not give me the job to tell everybody whether they're right or wrong. I am not that judge. I can only tell you what I think I know. And I want that quote, please. I think I know this stuff. And I've got 40 years experience trying it, and I've tried to understand it, and I am still learning every day. So as I learn, I will share. And I'm not sick. I'm not going anywhere. I'm not like on my deathbed, and now I'm starting to share all these secrets. No. I just turned over a new leaf. I would love for more people to know about it. It fuels my passion. It fuels our sport of hot rod Harley-Davidson engine building and the new bagger racing. The last thing, please remember, y'all, the first race of the year, Hogs Gone Wild, is this weekend at Silver Dollar Motorsports Park in Reynolds, Georgia. We'll have the biggest Harley bagger race of 2020 so far. This will be the first one too, but I'm looking forward to it. We're going to go over there and do some test runs and practice Friday afternoon. The race is on Saturday. Sunshine all day Friday, all day Saturday. It's going to be cool. It's going to be in the 50s, and it'll be breezy. So bring a jacket, bring a hoodie, bring a hat, bring your leather so you can go down the track. Everybody needs to run. Even if you got a stock bike and it's really slow, man, please come run, because once you go down the stage and go down the racetrack, you will be hooked. You will be hooked. I still got hook holes in my lip from being hooked. I can't wait to go. God bless y'all so much. Thank you for the opportunity to come into your home and your shop and share this info with you. And please take it for what it is. It's only my opinion. I'm not telling you that anybody's wrong, okay? Thank y'all so much. May God bless, and good night.